Hello and welcome to this week's News Desk with me, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillen. This is Season 4, Episode 26. And as we said before we switched the record button here this week, what have we got to talk about, Nancy, other than soccer, football and tennis? Really not much else going on the world stage that people are paying attention to now. Really, those two things. Well, now it's all about football, of course, but we did have Wimbledon that we're going to wrap up with to start off with, Nancy. But first of all, how are you doing? Are you able to get any sleep? I know it's hot over there, and you are just going from one football venue to another.
Yeah, more or less. I think the lack of sleep is less to do with the heat and more to do with just kind of being up and down the country, going to matches and getting back a bit late and starting early. But it's all part of it, isn't it? I think having such a big tournament, like international football tournament, happening on your own doorstep, you've got to make the most of it and then sleep after. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean the weather is it's pretty hot, but I think it's kind of adding to it. It's when it's been really nice, it's been great to have that nice weather, have the football on and stuff. So yeah, it's been really good so far.
Terrific. Well, we're going to get a full roundup from you a little bit later on in the programme, but we wanted to start with Wimbledon, the tennis. As I said, that wrapped up, of course, last weekend, and we've got a brand new Grand Slam winner, Nancy. Really, well, there's a lot we could say about this young lady, Elena Rybakina, who actually won that Wimbledon final in 3 sets against Tunisia's Jabeur. That was 3-6, 6-2, 6-2. Now, I don't know where to begin with this. I have to say I was very impressed with her during this tournament. So when it got to the semis, I was kind of thinking this girl's got the game if she's got the nerve and the moment, the Grand Slam moment. Were you surprised at all? Because I know your money was on Jabeur, but that was before the semis and before the final. How were you feeling going into the final? Did you still think that she was going to take the title?
Yeah, I did. I was still backing ons, to be honest. I think just because I agree that, right, how do you know? Are you sure how to say her name? Because when I was listening to the BBC's coverage, they constantly changed it. Are you Rybakina? Rybakina. Now you're making me say it's Rybakina, isn't it? So it's Rybakina. Rybakina. Okay,
yes,
cool.
Elena Rybakina.
Rybakina. Nice. I think, Rybakina is an interesting one because I know before the pandemic, she was on she was really rising up the world rankings. She won her first WTA title at quite a young age and was, really impressing. I think at the start of 2020, she was on she'd reached 4 or 5 finals. And obviously then COVID hit and the pandemic hit. And then, obviously she almost had to start again when play came back. So I hadn't really she's on that rise compared to Ons, who had been kind of at the top already for 6 or 7 months in the top 10. Kind of went into the tournament as the 3rd seed. I think I was expecting her. It seemed like a Grand Slam title was kind of the next step for her compared to Rybakina, who maybe was on more of a rise, and that was kind of a few months away. So for me, Ons was who I thought was going to win. I agree. Yeah, maybe in the semis when she looked a little bit shaky in the second set against Tatiana Maria, maybe at that point, that was probably, she looked a bit weak there. But I was really impressed with Rybakina. I think the way she dealt with Ons, having lost the first set, she just kind of came back and dealt with her really well and was probably the most calm and composed tennis player I have ever seen. Didn't really show much emotion, especially when she won as well. She just kind of, she must have just been in shock because she just kind of waved at the crowd and then went and sat down, and that was it. It was the most understated celebration for a Grand Slam I think I've ever seen.
It was real deer in the headlights, wasn't it? I mean, okay, I've won this game. It could have been the first round.
Exactly. It could have been one game in the first round of the tournament. She obviously manages to keep her emotions in check. I think in complete contrast to Ons, who when she lost the second set, or when it wasn't looking good for her. She was really visibly emotional. Like she showed that emotion really visibly. She was obviously disappointed and upset.
Yeah, to go back to the semis, as you say, in the second set there, she started to show her vulnerability. And I think, her confidence got hit a little bit then. And winning the first set in the finals, that would have given her some confidence. But I think she knew she wasn't secure. She realized that Elena could read the game that she had to play in order to beat Ons, and she read it very quickly to come back 6-2, 6-2, because Ons just never got back into it once she realized. It was a little bit like the men's final too, the way Elena played, because unless she could, soften her wrist at the net, there's no way that Ons could beat her on the baseline. Because she's got the height too. I think she's 6 foot and Ons is 5'6", so there's a few inches difference there. Yeah. And she's also got the power at the baseline. Like I said, that I think Ons was always going to struggle to beat her on the baseline. So it was going to be, those drop shots that Chris Evert was commentating for ESPN, and saying how, and the other commentators were saying, well, in your day, you used to have the drop shot mastered because she couldn't win it, from the baseline in terms of strength. She was a baseliner, but she didn't have the strength, so she had to master the drop shot. And I thought the way Elena picked up that cue and really played it to her advantage, literally. I thought that was smart for her level of maturity. She's only 23 after all. She's only got to a Grand Slam quarterfinal in the past. I think that was in Roland Garros. So this was a big jump up the ladder for her, and I thought very smart, very intelligent play for her to beat what was then, Ons was the number 2 then, but on Monday she slipped down 3 places. She's now number 5. So I think we're going to see a lot more of Elena now. Hopefully she can take all that's coming with it when she win a Grand Slam. Maybe she ought to go and compare notes with Emma Raducanu. Say, okay, how do you deal with this winning a Grand Slam? Because suddenly it changes your life.
Yeah, and the pressure changes. I think she's definitely gone from someone who to outside the world of tennis, someone doesn't follow regularly, who only watches Grand Slams. Like you said, she's only been in the quarterfinal of a Grand Slam once. It's not as quite drastic a jump as Emma Raducanu was, but it's still like really propelling yourself into the mainstream, the public consciousness. So that the pressure, we've seen it so many times with younger players. The pressure after not unexpectedly winning a Grand Slam, but being kind of, someone that's kind of behind the scenes on the WTA tour to going to one of the main kind of front runners, Grand Slam winners is, it's a lot of pressure for young players. So, I'm interested to see kind of how she does next, because she did look pretty brilliant. And like I was saying before the pandemic, she had that really good run of form as well. And it's almost like this maybe in her head is a long time coming, because she maybe thought, if it wasn't for the pandemic, she could have, achieved that Grand Slam success last year or in 2020.
Yeah. Well, she certainly consolidated, I think, coming into this tournament by reaching the final there. And she'd only dropped one set, actually, during the tournament by the time she beat Simone Halep in the semis. So I think she's certainly stamped her authority. And I think with maturity and more net play, coming to the net, more volleying, she's going to have quite the complete game, but very different game to, say, Ons and some of the others. When we think of some of the players that weren't there, Nancy, and their different games too. Now, there's so many potential Grand Slam winners right now.
Yeah, it's so, I think, the big thing about the Wimbledon tournament this year was that a lot of the kind of the bigger names went out, and then you had this draw essentially almost at the quarterfinals of names that I hadn't even I that follows it very regularly. Still people that were new to me. Like didn't really know much about Tatiana Maria. I didn't know about the German her German woman that she played in the quarterfinals, and I can't remember her name. It was like
Maria.
No, it was who Tatiana Maria played. It was Nilma or something like that, who had beaten Heather Watson, I think it was previously. Like, I didn't know too much about her. There are a lot of kind of players that took the opportunity of some of the bigger names going out and, went quite far.
Well, I mean, we had a lot of players that, for some reason, one reason or another, just weren't there. I mean, obviously, Iga Swiatek going out, that was not a surprise to those who knew that she wasn't as good on grass. But when you look at all the other players that have been injured or weren't there, like Anna Kontaveit, she's the world number 2, Maria Sakkari, Paula Badoza, Sabalenka, and then, of course, Danielle Collins, the American, Jessica Pegula, Garbine Muguruza, and then Emma Raducanu. And that's just the top 10. There's a bunch of players, and then Coco Gauff, and on we go. So there's a number of players there that are sidelined for whatever reason, injury or whatever, that could come back. And I think the US Open is going to be a very interesting competition if all of these ladies come back in time for this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the players that I thought was amazing, who kind of came from nowhere, was Harmony Tan, who got to did she get to the quarterfinals, I think it was, and then lost to Anna Samova, or round of 16, I think that match was. She was brilliant. I watched her twice. I watched her against Serena Williams, and then I think it was it wasn't Katie Bolter, maybe it was. But she looked amazing. And it's like you said, that you've got kind of the bigger established names, and then it seems like every tournament there's someone that's a little bit unknown that comes through and then adds to that pile. And eventually, you get to, like you said, the US Open, and it's going to be a really interesting tournament.
Yeah, I think it is. All right, well, we'll look forward to that, and we'll look forward to seeing the likes of Leylah Fernandez as well. Of course, the US finalist last year in the US Open. There's a lot of players, Azarenka, Anisimova, and the other one that's dropped down the order is Petra Kvitova, who she was in the top 10 for a while. She's down now, ranked 24th right now. There's just a lot to choose from. We will have plenty of time to look forward to the US Open, but meanwhile, there's a couple of other things that are happening in the world of women's sports right now. But before we get to the football, I do want to mention that in lacrosse, which is a very popular sport over here, Nancy, it's not so popular in England. I don't think it was available in school when I was in school there.
No, I only really came across it at uni, actually, where they had a lacrosse team, but never played lacrosse at school.
No, well, over here, as I said, it's very popular, and there was a World Championship which took place, culminated last Saturday in Towson, Maryland, at the Unitas Stadium, and the US, they defeated Canada to become the first host country to win a world champion. So they're now 8-time world champions, and since its first foreign tour in 1935, the US women's national team has been chasing the dual purpose of winning on the field and helping to grow this great game, and the chase has been successful by them winning again, and that's the 8 out of 10 championships. So hugely popular sport over here, and of course a great win for the US. So a shout out to the US lacrosse team for their win last Saturday here in Maryland, which is just across the state line from me. It's actually not very far. If I'd have known that was happening, I might have gone, Nancy, because Towson is not really very far from me. But there we are. Other things on our mind, and not least of all Wimbledon, because I was glued to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think lacrosse is definitely a great sport. I'd like to see a bit more of it on our TVs here, to rival Wimbledon.
Yeah, there we go. All right, let's move on now to some football. Shall I start with what's happening over here? Because really, this is an important tournament, the CONCACAF Championship. In the greater scheme of things, it is a qualifier for the World Cup next year down under, and also the Paris Olympic Games in 2024. And as you know, last week, Nancy, we were well on our way to getting qualified. We have qualified, we being the US. And then we managed surprisingly only a 1-0 defeat of Mexico on Monday. And that was thanks to Kristie Mewis, who actually scored in the 89th minute. So big sigh of relief when she scored and just literally scrambled it over the line, as I said, in the 89th minute. Not a very impressive performance, all said and done, Nancy. I only saw it on replay because the kickoff was 10 p.m. Eastern. And there's a lot of chatter over here of discontent with the US coach, Vlatko Andonovski. Have you been able to follow any of that at all? Have you been too absorbed in the Euros to realise what was happening over here?
No, I've seen a bit of it on Twitter, a bit of the criticism. And yeah, I think it's kind of hard for me to have an opinion on it because I haven't really actually been able to watch a full game. I haven't really seen the US play, kind of just seen the results and the reaction on Twitter. So yeah, I couldn't really say whether it was fair or unfair, but it's, I think it is interesting to see. I mean, obviously the US is, in terms of football, is so used to success. So it's interesting to see kind of a bit of discontent with the manager and yeah, I suppose disappointment at the results on the pitch because that's kind of not what you're normally used to hearing from the US.
No, not very compelling, for sure. But having won 1-0, we beat Jamaica, and we beat Haiti, of course, in the first round. We now move on to Costa Rica, which we're playing tomorrow, July 14th. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern, and that's on CBS Sports Network, so we will be able to watch that, the 7 o'clock kickoff. And hopefully that will, be successful for them. It's just the semi-finals, that we go all the way. But there's still, as you say, there's some discontent in the US camp. There is not the synergy, it seems, that there used to be. We've got a lot of young players that we've talked about that are getting their chance now, improving themselves. But I guess it's mixing the young with the veterans and getting that same kind of synergy that the veterans have. Because if you look at the successful teams, you take a look at the last World Cup, Nancy, and look at the synergy in that team. It really was a very, very polished performance, wasn't it, if you look back in the World Cup, the last World Cup?
Yeah, of course. And, I think not even just the last World Cup, I think every major tournament in my
except the beginning of the Olympics and certainly the start of the Olympics. Yeah,
I mean, well, that's true. I suppose the 2020 Olympics, not, but other Olympics I've watched, that it's always been that synergy and that kind of something about the US team that has always made them a cut above the other team and always grind out the results. That's something I think that's always been iconic about a US team. Here, that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment.
No, it certainly doesn't. Well, we're going to move on to the Euros now because there is lots to talk about. There's been lots of games since we recorded last week's show. You've been busy, as you said, up and down the country, following, attending some as a fan and as a reporter, and watching on TV. I will say, before we came on air today, I was watching the Sweden-Switzerland game, which ended with a 2-1 win for Sweden. That was interesting. I expected a better performance from Sweden, though, Nancy. I know you saw a little bit of that as well too, didn't you?
Yeah, so I watched that game too. Yeah, I agree. I was a little bit disappointed by Sweden. I think mainly just because of the expectation that has been put on them. I think they are, there are a lot of favourites to win the Euros. I think there's probably 6 or 7, but I think people look to Sweden with the players they've got and the fact they won a silver medal at the Olympics last year, and kind of expected them to be really up there among the title contenders. And it's not like they're doing badly, but they drew against the Netherlands in their first group match, which again isn't bad. The Netherlands are the defending champions, but I think if they want to be winning the competition, they want to be winning those games. And then, a 2-1 win against Switzerland. They didn't look too convincing. Switzerland are an okay team, but they didn't, Sweden didn't really kind of dominate the game and look, it wasn't a comfortable win. It's kind of been interesting to see that they've struggled a little bit, especially when you compare, I would say probably France, Germany and England have all had a result where it's been very, like you see that result and you think, they could really go all the way. So France beating Italy 5-1, Germany beating Denmark 4-0, and then Spain last night 2-0, and then England beating Norway 8-0. Like, those are the kind of results that a tournament winner gets. And Sweden at the moment don't seem to be quite at that level.
Let's go back into the start of the tournament, which was only last week. A lot of games have taken place, but it did actually start last Wednesday, the 6th of July, when England played Austria. I know you were there as a keen fan. Not a very impressive performance, Nancy. I was like, thumbs down. I thought, England, you have got to wake up and smell the roses, because this is not a way to advance very far in the Euros. And things turned around, as you say, when they reached the Norway game. But let's talk about that first one. What was that about? What do you think that was? Why do you think they the wheels weren't turning very smoothly, were they?
No, I think. Firstly, I suppose there was a bit of pressure and maybe a bit of nerves, just because it was the tournament opener, had been a lot of build up to that moment. And there were around 65,000 fans at Old Trafford. So even though it was a home crowd and they were cheering for England, I suppose quite a big occasion, and maybe that got to them a little bit. I do also think credit to Austria where it's due. I think Austria are a decent team. I'd be interested to see how they do against Norway on Friday in the last Group A match. But I think Austria were just really good at breaking England's play up, frustrating them. Could have very well equalised at the end, towards the end, I think. I think it's a bit of everything. I think obviously the most important thing is that England got the win, and people don't necessarily remember the performances as long as you get the 3 points and then go again the next match, which is what England did, and now are going to win Group A. So it could have easily gone wrong, but I'm sure Serena Wiegmann had it all under control. I imagine it was probably part of the game plan.
That was the England manager, of course, who took over just in time to bring the team to the Euros, and on home soil as well. I'm sure there's a little bit of pressure, but let's just underline the fact that there was crowds over 60,000, which was absolutely phenomenal. And the atmosphere must have been wonderful, Nancy. A really packed stadium there. I think the England came out to support the women, and to quell all those critics that say, nobody wants to watch women's sports. By golly, they do.
Yeah, and you know what? It hasn't even been the opener. I'd say every match that I've seen or been to has been incredibly well attended. It's constantly breaking records. So I don't know what the current record is, but there was a point where every match was setting the new record for a group game at the Euros not involving the home nation. Because we're talking kind of like 20,000 people turning up to watch the different countries play. The game I was at last night was 16,000. It's kind of averaging between 10 to 20,000, which for not including England is absolutely incredible. That obviously you've got fans visiting from other countries as well, but then just to get kind of the local people that live nearby the stadium or people that just want to see a bit of women's football coming out as well was amazing. And the atmosphere every game I've been to has been brilliant. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, that Sweden-Switzerland game, that looked pretty packed to me. That was in Sheffield, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bramall Lane. And
then I think Netherlands are playing Portugal in Manchester City. Am I right?
It's Manchester United women's ground, so Lee Village, which is one of the smaller stadiums. But again, when you've got when it's sold out, it kind of, that's actually quite nice to play in front of a sold out stadium, even if it's a little bit smaller. And yeah, it's just, I remember going to the 2019 Women's World Cup for England versus Scotland, and it was in quite a big stadium and the attendance wasn't great. And I remember just the atmosphere being a bit flat, and the Euros is so far it's been a complete contrast to that. So I think by the time we get to the end of the tournament, the total number of tickets sold is going to be, I think it's already record breaking, but I think it's going to be, really, really significant number.
Well, that's really, really encouraging, I have to say. Just a quick note that also over here, Angel City have been a new team on the NWSL, in the NWSL, a new expansion team, Angel City in LA, and they've got a group of women on their board, some big names in show business as well supporting it, and they've got some big names on the pitch as well. And they've been drawing tremendous crowds. They had 22,000 there earlier this week, Nancy. And it's really noticeable how, given the right kind of circumstances, the PR, the people behind it, the machinery, it's been really a very, very different ball game. Literally, women, you wouldn't know whether it was men or women. It's just been a tremendous crowd that have been supporting Angel City already. So that's really super encouraging, especially as it looks like we're going to have two new expansion teams over here come next season. But on we go back to the Euros, guys. I just want to mention that Germany beat Spain 2-0. Did you watch that game yesterday?
Yeah, so I went to that game. I was in the crowd as a fan. It was a really, really entertaining game. Yeah, I thought both teams looked pretty good, but just Germany managed to score and Spain didn't. Essentially, that's kind of the story of that one. But it was a great match.
Yeah, and where did that take place?
That was at Brentford Community Stadium. Again, that was 16,000 people there, and it was a really good atmosphere.
Super. Okay, well, coming up then, as I said today, Netherlands versus Portugal, and tomorrow Italy play Iceland, France plays Belgium, and your next big game is England, is on Friday against Northern Ireland in that group. That should be, especially with the confidence of winning 8-0 against Norway, that should be quite an easy passage for England, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, not to absolutely no disrespect to Northern Ireland, but yeah, if Norway beat Northern Ireland 4-1 and we beat Norway 8-0, then it could be another high-scoring one. But I do think, I mean, I don't know what Serena is going to do in terms of rotation. I think there's a value to, keeping a lot of the players on the pitch just to give them kind of, so they can keep their momentum. But I would also like to see some players rested a little bit, just so that when we get to the quarterfinals, they're fresh and ready to go.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Austria will be facing Norway. But this weekend, Finland are going to be against Germany. Denmark plays Spain. Switzerland are up against the Netherlands, and Sweden face Portugal. So lots of really, really great football to look forward to this weekend. And it's on ESPN. For those who are listening to this in the States, most of these games are on ESPN 2. So you can pretty much see pretty much all of it. I mean, I've been able to tune in any time that I've had time to watch anything. It's been there. And I know that right now, as we are recording, they are airing the Netherlands-Portugal game. So, and I just watched Sweden-Switzerland on ESPN 2. So in the UK, Nancy, is it wall-to-wall coverage on BBC?
It is, yeah. It's, I mean, it's every single match. You can watch every single match on TV. Normally on BBC 1, 2, or if not on those channels, the red button. So again, it's great to see that coverage. Just because, there's not a men's international football tournament on this summer. So if people are missing their football and they accidentally go on the BBC and find it, that's, maybe someone new getting into the women's game. So yeah, it's been great that it's just so accessible to watch as well.
Yeah. All right. I know it's early on in the tournament. We're not even, we are just a week into it. And you had teams that you were looking out for before the start of the tournament. There's been some changes. Some players, as we talked about last week in Spain, from the Spanish team getting sidelined just before the tournament. Who do you like now? Who has been impressing you, surprising you, or shocking you, or disappointing you?
I think my expectations for England have increased just because I wanted to, not get too excited. And I still think that is the case because at the end of the day, because it's the group stage, you beat Norway 8-0 or 1-0, it's the same. Like you could still go and win your you could still go and lose your quarterfinal or your semi-final. But I think that 8-0 really took me by surprise. Like, just Norway are a good team. It's not like it's a lower ranked team. That's a good team that we're beating. So I think England have, I've been surprised at how good they looked in that match, but I still want to remain cautiously. I'm cautiously optimistic, I think. I really like the look of Germany. I think they look good in defence and clinical up top. Quite a formidable team, I think, working together quite well. France as well, but I'm a little... I think France, when they went... Obviously, they went like 5-0 up, but they kind of then sat back and I think looked a little weaker. So I think there were flaws in the team that could be taken advantage of. In terms of disappointments, I've been quite disappointed in, I think, Sweden, like we discussed. I think Denmark, I was surprised to see that they lost 4-0 to Germany. I thought kind of, that I know they're in the group of death, but I thought they'd give it a bit more welly. And then Italy as well, and they've only played one game. So who knows how they're doing in their next game coming up. But yeah, I was really surprised to see them lose so heavily to the French. And same with Norway losing to England as well. I had kind of backed Norway as a bit of a dark horse, but that prediction is probably not going to be true now. So yeah, I think it arranged. But I think that coming out of the first round of group stages and some of the second, I'd say England, France and Germany are looking very strong.
All right. Well, we'll have more of this next week. Just remind everybody when the final is, Nancy.
The final is the 31st of July at 5 p.m. UK time at Wembley. Hopefully I'll be there in an England shirt. We can hope.
We hope so. All right. Well, more of this, as I said, next week on the show. Any other football aside news, Nancy? Have you got any other tidbits or anything that you hear first on the Wisp News desk?
Well, I suppose I've been following a little bit the Women's African Cup of Nations because they're playing the quarterfinals tonight, and whoever wins the quarterfinals qualifies for the Women's World Cup next year. So, just interested to see what teams qualify from that. I think it's Zimbabwe and Senegal is one of them. And then, a few other teams as well involved. I think Morocco, Botswana, South Africa, Tunisia, and then Cameroon, Nigeria. So, interested to see which teams make it through to the World Cup.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have more of that too on the show next week. But we have one final item of news that's not football. It is basketball. And that's a quick update on the Brittany Griner case. And I'm sure if you haven't been listening to us, there's plenty of news of this in the US about the WNBA player who has been detained in Russia since February now. And she pled guilty on July 7th to carrying drugs. She was accused of possessing vape cartridges, and that, of course, is illegal in Russia. And she's been detained, as I said, since February. And we know that she's been writing to the U.S. President Biden, Nancy, and I know her wife, Sherry, has also. But you have an update now. There has been a little move on the chessboard, but I think nothing major.
No, nothing major. I think pretty much the same situation, really. But Joe Biden wrote back to Brittany Griner saying, well, we haven't seen the letter, but her wife, Sherelle, said, I was able to read Biden's letter and it brought so much joy. as well for BG. I believe every word she said to him, he understood, and he sees her as a person, and he hasn't forgotten her, which I think is obviously such a, I think for Brittany Griner, just knowing that the US president is aware of the situation is probably quite a relief. Obviously he would be, but just to have that, I think, in a letter. I also was reading today that LeBron James, the male basketball player, has also he's got like a TV show coming out, and there was a trailer for it. And so this, I think it was recorded back in June, so before her trial started, but he kind of criticised the US efforts to get her back a bit. So yeah, whether you agree with him or not, I suppose a figure like him getting involved or just speaking about it again raises awareness of what's happening. And then as well, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he's just re-emphasized that the US are trying everything they can to get her released. So yeah, hopefully we'll have a more positive update about that situation soon.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Nancy. And that, I think, wraps it up for this week, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Very, very football and tennis heavy, but I think it's understandable given what's going on at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. All right, then the next game for you to attend is which? Is it the England game on Friday?
Yeah, so I'll be going to England, Northern Ireland on Friday, and then Denmark and Spain on Saturday, and then that's me done for the group stages. So yeah, fingers crossed I get accreditation for the knockouts, because that opens after the group stage finishes. So yeah, it's hopefully we'll be able to go to some more matches for the knockouts.
You don't want to give a shout out to any particular player, do you? I'm just nudging you here. I think there's somebody you might like to give a shout out to.
Beth Mead for her hat-trick. Yeah.
Your Arsenal player.
Arsenal star Beth Mead was definitely the best player on the pitch for England, Norway, scoring 3 goals, a hat-trick against Norway. And yeah, she's just had a brilliant season, and I'm excited. She's now leading for the Golden Boot as well in the Euros with 4 goals. So I'm very excited to see how she gets on for the rest of the tournament, and it's very well deserved after a brilliant season with Arsenal as well. So
all right.
Yeah, shout out to Beth Mead.
Yeah, well done, Beth. All right, more of this next week on the show, but for now, don't forget to follow Nancy on social media.
Yep, so my Twitter handle is @Nancy_Gillen, and my Instagram handle is NancyGillen_sport. And then, yeah, you can also see all my work at Give Me Sport Women, which is on Twitter, it's @GiveMeSportW.
All right, and we're, of course, at WISports and on social media and online at wisports.com, where you'll find the show notes of the stories that we covered here and the links to those stories. So that's it from Nancy and I. Nancy's going to get back to the Euros. I'm going to watch the US play Costa Rica tomorrow. Until next week, then, thank you for listening. Enjoy your sport and particularly your football. Goodbye for now.